Thank you for the opportunity today to deliver this lecture and my appreciation to Professor Susie Graham, to Prof. Naidu, to everyone who has been involved in organizing this program, from the Kapuscinski Development Lectures to the University of Johannesburg, where I have many friends on staff, faculty, as well as former students, a university I respect so much, from also colleagues at the European Commission, UNDP. Thank you, all of you, for the kind invitation and for the sponsorship to present today. My presentation today is titled Leadership, Education, and Global Social Impact. It is a development lecture, but if you would indulge me, I would frame this as Development 2.0, global engagement with intention and contribution focused on global social impact. Development 2.0, global engagement. You see, Development 2.0 as global engagement is deeply personal to me. Born in a small community in northern Sri Lanka, my journey took me from Sri Lanka to the United States and then around the world to work with the UN, 2 US presidents, global and educational organizations working in over 100 countries. And most importantly, engagement and partnership with brilliant and deeply committed people all over the world. It's been a privilege. Of course, my years in South Africa, leading Monash South Africa, will always be very special to me. You see, as I see it, traditional development focuses on economic and social development of nations and their peoples, and the implementation of foreign aid and development assistance most often. As I see it, global engagement is focused on equity as we strive to uphold fairness and justice in our work and actions. Global engagement is about creating opportunity for one another. It is about inclusion. These are values that must inform our work every day. Recently, at the World Education Services, which I lead today, we articulated our values and said that our values are about opportunity, about being enterprising, about inclusion, equity, and also having expertise. Those may be my organization's values today, but I would say those are the values that I've taken to my work in development and in global engagement. So let me talk a little bit more about global engagement to drive global social impact. When you begin your career, you often think that without money, without resources, that you can't do much, that you can't drive impact. And money is important. Resources are important, but it's not everything. Over the years, I learned that it's about investing in people. It's about investing in young people and what I call the 4 C's when it comes to young people: their competencies, their confidence, their character, and their connection to one another. I invested also in education. My own education and continuing education, it of course continues. And I invested in the education for many, many others around the world. Education, I think we can all agree, is truly transformative. Education is indeed the great equalizer. We can take people and young people from dramatically different socioeconomic backgrounds, and we can put them in classrooms together. We can give them the support to learn and to succeed. And their education, regardless of their personal background, provides the strongest basis for opportunities that follow in their lifetime. Investing in people is about investing in education and investing in the full potential of people. This is global engagement. This is global social impact. And investing in people and in young people goes to a whole separate level of impact when you invest in networks of extraordinary people. I've had the opportunity to be connected to some amazing global networks of people. Echoing Green is this remarkable organization that includes about 1,000 social innovators who've been brought together from around the world over about 35 years. Atlas Corps is another amazing global organization of young people and older people. And these are civil society leaders. There are about 1,000 of them in a network from 100 countries. And then under President Obama, I had a chance to run the United States Peace Corps, which includes Americans serving about 27 months in remote communities around the world, and about 250,000 people have served in this way over 60 years. And all of those Americans went on to careers focused on global development for the most part. They also became corporate CEOs and many other professions. So we have to invest in people and in networks of people. I also invested my time in organizations that drive impact, organizations that are squarely focused on mission. They have to be focused on driving mission. Organizations that are enterprising, organizations that are agile and entrepreneurial and able to move fast, organizations that have deep integrity. The focus on organizations is about building organizational capacity and organizational leadership. It's about strengthening their effectiveness, their access to resources, meaningful partnerships, and ultimately their organizational impact. And just like people, just like investing in people, investing in organizations goes to a whole separate level of global social impact when you invest in networks of organizations. So imagine what happens when we invest in networks of people and networks of organizations. It was a privilege for me in my career to work with several organizations that were global networks. The International Youth Foundation, 30 years old, and bringing together leading organizations around the globe focused on youth development, and in the end, supporting youth leaders in solving the problems of today and tomorrow. Laureate International Universities is an organization that brought together 70 universities around the world to learn from one another. My current organization, World Education Services, has developed a national network across the United States and another national network all over Canada. And this is a network of organizations focused on economic opportunity for new Americans or immigrants. There is incredible power in investing in these networks of organizations and supporting them in building capacity to take their mission and to drive it for real impact. Development 2.0, also known as global engagement, is about investing in people, and people make up powerful networks.
Oh my God.
Powerful organizations. If you invest in mission-driven organizations, you drive systems change globally, and you drive global social impact. In America, we often speak about where we give our time, our talent, and our money. I can say for certain that investing my time, my talent, and my money in promising people, in promising young people, promising organizations, and promising networks is what helped me to drive systems change and social impact. I'm going to go further. It is all connected. In global engagement, it's been important for me to connect the dots, to see the connections. With each year of my career, I see more connections, more opportunity to connect the dots, to build linkages, to build the strength of people, networks, and movements. I would point further to design thinking, now a field of study, a way of working, and a practice. It's a way of thinking, a human-centered and solutions-based approach that I appreciate so much. For me, the more I connect people and organizations and human-centered, innovative solutions, the more I can drive impact. And as I was blessed to work in more and more countries, now remember, I started out in Sri Lanka, and I didn't leave Sri Lanka till I was about 7, came to the US and started my career in the UN. So I started out with more limited exposure, and that exposure expanded over time. This is what happens to most young people. And as I began to work in more and more countries and more continents and regions of the world, more sub-regions, the more connections I started to see. And the more solutions I saw as well. Countries and regions are interconnected, the problems and the solutions. We've got to understand local history and context. It is imperative to understand that. We've got to understand the geopolitics of nations and regions, and gaining this understanding and learning from my colleagues, my students, the young people I was around. They taught me about the local context, the country context, the geopolitics. It all connected. So in your career, you may choose one country, you may choose one region for the focus of your work, But what we can't do is lose sight of either the local context or the global context. It is way too interconnected for us to lose sight of either. There is more interconnectedness, so let me go deeper. Programmatic areas of work are interconnected. Our professors, and I know Prof. Naidu and Prof. Graham certainly do this, they ask us to take an interdisciplinary approach to our studies, right? They remind us about that all the time. Take classes in different departments, learn about different fields of study. Well, you see, that doesn't end at university. At university, you have your professors and your deans and advisors to remind you of that. But you got to keep that in mind as you enter the world of work. We have this view that we need to become experts in specific arenas of education and economic development, agriculture, health, gender, energy, environment. We want to go deep and develop expertise, and that's important. And some of you will develop deep expertise, and some of you will be more generalists. What I learned in my career that these programmatic areas in development 1.0 and in development 2.0, they're all interconnected. It's an extension of interdisciplinary studies at university to programmatic intersections in global engagement work. A singular lens isn't effective. Even when we become experts in one area, we have to connect the dots. It's truly interdisciplinary. It's interconnected. It's the application of design thinking to development 2.0, to global engagement, to drive global social impact. I'm going to take it a little further. Tri-sector impact across government, business, and nonprofit or civil society organizations. So I'm going to take development 2.0 further. A tri-sector career is actually an optimal path to drive global impact. How can you drive positive impact for individuals from each sector? How can you drive systems change from each sector? I worked across sectors. Here's what I learned. In government, while working there, I understood politics beyond seeing it on the news. I understood how government works at the highest levels across branches of governments. I understood the convening power of governments, the ability of certain governments to convene other governments. International organizations, such as the UN, UNDP, and others, are an extension of our governments. While working in the public sector, I learned when it's best to work through your own government bilaterally, and when it's optimal to work through international organizations multilaterally. Then I spent another third of my career in business. There, I honed another set of skills. Understanding strategy and planning. You learn that in business. Management and operational effectiveness. Excellence in execution. A focus on achieving results. Understanding, this is really important to understand from the business sector. Understanding how you can access and mobilize private capital for development sectors such as education and health. I learned that working in the private sector. Then I spent the other third of my career in nonprofits and civil society. I learned a valuable set of skills there: partnerships, local, regional, and global, multi-sector engagement, working to connect programmatic areas in the design of programs in development. I learned advocacy, grassroots mobilization, fundraising, and resource mobilization. So perhaps you choose to work just in one sector, but still learn how you engage with the other sectors, what they have to offer, and how they can help you in driving the impact that you hope to have. I'm going to take it a level further. Take that idea of interconnection and interdisciplinary thinking to your skill set. In running organizations and driving your impact, you can't just be a finance person or a program person. And if you choose to be, you really have to understand how to work with people from different parts of the organization who specialize with different skill sets. So you got to be a leader, you have to be programmatic, you have to be operational, financial, you got to have basic financial skills, and superior financial skills are even better. Got to understand data and how to use data, communication and branding. Organizational issues matter, and execution. So I think you're getting what I'm saying. Got to understand all the different ways to be and lead and connect the dots. Got to know how to drive impact from government, business, and civil society sectors. This is how we realize the full potential of our contributions to realize long-term social change. You can pick an issue, a region, a sector, but you cannot make the choice not to understand the other arenas or to connect the dots. I believe in working as a connector every day, a connector of people, organizations, networks, resources, ideas, and solutions. I'll end with my call to action to all the students. Students at the University of Johannesburg and elsewhere, you simply have unlimited potential to drive impact in this world. You are a generation unlike any previous generation. You're a generation committed to equity, inclusion, and improving opportunity for all people. Your generation gets that. Your generation gets Development 2.0 as global impact for global social impact. Global engagement is about using your career trajectory to invest in people and organizations. We don't need to reinvent what works. What works exists in many places already. How do we replicate and scale ideas that work? How do we develop innovative solutions for pressing problems? A design thinking approach works. Human-centered and solutions-oriented. Nothing is one-dimensional. It's always a multi-country, multi-sectoral, multi-regional, involving intersection of programmatic areas. It is truly interdisciplinary and drawing on a wide variety of skill sets that you can bring to bear for your vision, for your career, and what you want to contribute to society. Let's rethink and take to the next level our approach to development, always starting with the individual. Then think about the interconnectedness of people, organizations, sectors, and programmatic areas. Apply the same thinking to your own career. Learn to engage key actors and drive impact from many different vantage points. This is how you will realize the greatest impact. To drive holistic, long-term, effective social change, we need to think global engagement and global social impact. This is leadership, and this is development at its next level. This is social justice for the next generation. I believe in you, and I can't wait to see how you drive change in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther, for your keynote speech. As I was listening to you and looking at the questions that are coming in, I thought to myself, I'm so proud to know a strong female leader in this world that's making a difference. And I'm sure you're an inspiration to everybody who's logged on today to listen to you. I know you're an inspiration of mine, and thank you for that. I think that I'm going to offer a few words in response that really, were highlighted for me when you spoke. And then we'll move on to the really illuminating questions that have come through from the people who've logged on today to listen to you. I think that it was very, very important what you said about the 4 C's and referring to competencies and confidence and character and connection in relation to students. That really hit home. It's a mnemonic, some of us always use that in teaching. So we'll keep the 4 C's, and I'll teach my students that we should reflect on that on a daily basis. And it is about that. And I see that myself as an academic. I see that on a daily basis. Students' character really shines through. To see them growing in academic space from one level to another, to progress on their academic journey is so wonderful. And it really does contribute to the society that we're involved in at the local level and in terms of our own society internationally and globally. Another thing you said that was so important in our context in South Africa is that you said that education is transformative and that education is a great equalizer. We are, despite having made great strides in the South African context since 1994, still experiencing great inequalities in our society. And I know that our university strives to try and ensure students get the education they need and that no student is left behind, and that they will get the opportunities they deserve to become active members in society. So thank you for highlighting that very, very important point. I think another thing that really stood out as prominent to me was it's about building linkages and trying not to stay too focused or narrow-minded in thinking. Because as soon as you're narrow-minded, you close yourself off, what I was hearing you say, from many different opportunities you never thought were possible. So that is another very important point that I hope the students heard today in your lecture. I also think that your views on keeping in mind that when you enter the world of work, you have to think broadly and look for linkages anywhere. So you don't know where they may come from, but be open-minded about it is an important point, and that a singular lens is not effective. Often I think students might get the idea that if they pick one career, that they have to go into that career. And if they're a political science student, like my students, they must become president one day or a member of parliament or something like that. And that's great if that's what they want. But if they do become president, they will soon realize they have to know a lot about many different things, many different avenues in society. And so that it's a good thing that they try and broaden their horizons at this stage already. And so they, despite their personal challenges or personal circumstances with their apparent limitations, that if they keep an open mind, believe in opportunities on their doorsteps, then they can truly become active, productive citizens. Another thing that you highlighted, which I feel is so important, is skill sets. We often hear in the education sector about 21st century skill sets. And that is so true. We are trying to ensure that our students are completely employable in whatever those changing careers are out there in the world, and that are not just limited to our country, but globally. And so we want our students to be those kinds of students that have access to many different skill sets so that they're set up well for a future and their careers going forward. So just so inspirational. Thank you so much, Esther, for your speech. I think that what I'd now like to do is open up to some questions. And we have quite a few questions. So what I'll do, Esther, is I'll give you...
Your summary was spot on.
Thanks, Esther. You're a good teacher. There you go, you see?
You're an amazing teacher, and I know that for a fact.
Thanks so much, Esther. I think what I'll do now is I'll look at one or two questions, maybe two or three questions, give you two or three questions at a time so that you can respond to those, and then we'll see how many rounds we can get in before people need to move on with the rest of their days.
Great.
So I think we've got the questions split up into various topics. So I think I'll take a topic question, an inspiration question, and a youth question, and then we'll carry on down that way. So we have a student asking us, in this time of the pandemic, how best can we invest in people and networks in the most effective manner? So that's the first question. I hope that you maybe took down keywords there, Esther. Mm-hmm. The second question is, well, we have Asafile saying it's very motivating to see Miss Benjamin, especially because she's female. My question would be, what kept you going or inspired you? And how did you make your way through nationally and globally? Oh, that's an excellent question. Well done. And then we have, let's take maybe one more question. We have from an academic. In my experience as an academic, I've found that often postgraduate students are strongly encouraged to network as a way to start to grow their early careers. But in your view, how important is it for young people at undergraduate level and even younger to start networking and collaborating? And I'll leave it at those three for now. Thanks, Esther.
Okay, these are great questions. The first question was about how to invest in people during a pandemic. And I think that it has been a fascinating year of figuring out how we do the work that we do every day, but virtually. So I am leading an organization that has close to 400, 500 staff on board, and making sure that my colleagues are well and safe was so important to me. Mm-hmm. So their safety, their health was what I prioritized first and foremost. And then it was about figuring out how to continue the work that I do in a virtual context. And I think all of us have figured that out. And it's been a remarkable set of stories. If you talk to any group of individuals, it's remarkable to see that most people figured out how to continue their work in a virtual context. And it was scary for me when our work overnight diminished by about 80% overnight. And we had to figure out how to bring it back. And it was probably one of the most impactful years for me of figuring out how to work with my colleagues, how to keep those I serve in the forefront of my thoughts, and how to use resources that my organization has access to help people who are adversely affected. So investing in people, investing in organizations, investing in networks has to continue. And in fact, it has to be taken to the next level during a pandemic. You don't always know the answers the day that it happens or overnight even, but it's through collaboration, problem solving, design thinking, and a solutions orientation that you figure out how to do that. So investing in people and organizations continues, whether it's in person or virtual. Thank you for that question. The second question about being a female leader, and I think my mom is watching, and, I think so many of us, probably every person on this call, had the benefit of someone who invested in us, right? I once worked at the International Youth Foundation, which I mentioned in my talk. And the founder of the International Youth Foundation used to say that every young person should have at least one adult who's irrationally committed to them. Imagine that. If we had a world where every young person, every child had one adult who was irrationally committed to them. And we used to debate and say, actually, that's not irrational. In fact, one adult who invested in us. I had my parents who were deeply committed to education. I had my grandparents, my grandfather, born in 1895, who believed in girls' education in the early 1900s. So others invested in me, and I am paying it forward for sure by investing in a whole host of young people. And they're young men and young women and others. But I was lucky. Many of us were lucky. And so that's how I became a leader. And I put my hand up. And there's one quality that was important to my development, and that's the quality of being fearless. We all know those children who are fearless to take on anything when they're younger. I was just fearless with taking on issues and being a part of movements. And I wanted to make a difference, I wanted to make sure my life meant something and that the people who invested in me saw a return on their investment. So I won the jackpot having people who believed in me. And when you have that privilege, you pay it forward and you do that for many more people who are coming up behind you. So I'm always looking at my younger colleagues and saying, what do you think? Can you lead this? And I turn to the young women in my organization to make sure they have a seat at the table and that they have agency and a voice. So, others believed in me and invested me, and I worked hard. I was fearless, and now I'm paying it forward for others. The third question is about networking. And many people would say I'm a pretty good networker. And frankly, I don't love the word networking. I love networks. I love bringing people together. And I got to know, I'm very blessed. It humbles me that I have friends and colleagues all over the world. And that network of people and dinner with a group, or if I'm in Johannesburg, I want to hang out at Four Ways Market with my former students. It's about meaningful connection. So forget the word network. Mm-hmm. It's about meaningful connection with your colleagues, with your peers, with your mentors, with those you are mentoring. And the meaningful relationships I have was based on putting my hand up, getting involved in projects all over the world. Those who know me well know that I don't sleep much because I'm always involved in things. I want to drive equity and inclusion and opportunity. And that takes time and effort And so the networks are built through engagement with one another. It's not going to cocktail parties or dinner parties or exchanging business cards. No, that's not what networking is. It's about meaningful connection with people. And you do that by rolling up your sleeves, as they say in America, and getting involved in a project. It could be a local project, it could be a national project, it can be a global project. I built relationships at all those levels. But some of the earliest relationships and the longest lasting came from local projects. So build your relationships and connections, but they have to be authentic, they have to be meaningful, they have to be substantive, they have to go both ways, they have to be win win. But I'm always thinking about how can I offer something to what this individual is working towards? So you've got to be selfless as well to form meaningful connections. We all know those individuals where it's more about what they get. No, those relationships are more about what you give. So that's what I would offer. Put your hand up, get involved, work on things together, and you will start to see the ripple effects of those connections and relationships.
Thanks so much, Esther. We have, wow, more and more questions coming in. They're flooding in. We have, thank you, Esther, too, for talking about equity. This student saying, as you know, students from underdeveloped countries find it difficult to obtain, credentials from various universities as a result of COVID, and students might lose the chance to study abroad. Yeah. But this student's not really asking a question, just saying thank you for the opportunity to share this, to say how important it is like that different agencies like World Education Services and others come up with equitable credential evaluation strategies globally. Now, I think this student is definitely thinking broadly and is thinking in an innovative and creative way. And so thank you very much. It's more of a comment, and thank you so much for that and using this platform for that. We also have another question which says, what advice or direction would Esther give to students who have just completed their master's degree and are looking to get their lives started? Especially with the global pandemic, how do we begin our careers when most companies and institutions require years of experience, even though we don't have any? Yes, that is a very common question, because you've heard the stories before. If you go on interviews and they say, do you have any experience? And the interviewee says, well, I'm hoping this will be my experience. And the job's turned down because they haven't had experience. So that's a very important question. And then just one more question here for this round, and that is, very similar thinking here. How do we as graduates get recognized by these wonderful organizations that you're talking about? How do we get these connections? How do we engage in this global space? So I think the students are just looking for maybe some practical examples of how to actually get your foot in the door, especially in the South African experience where unemployment is such a reality. And so how can we be part of these organizations to keep busy and gain experience? So a comment there, and then two other questions. Thanks, Esther.
Okay, thank you so much. The equity topic, nothing more important than this. And, as I mentioned, it is one of the 5 values of the organization that I'm leading. And we went through this process at World Education Services of identifying our values. And that was front and center, fairness and equity and justice in what we do. And let me just say, I may have an American accent today, and at 51, I've had this experience, but I was born in a very simple get started. It's about the drive, it's about the fearlessness, and it's about just continuing on the journey. So I am no different from so many of you in where I started. Keep pushing one day at a time, one job at a time, one project at a time. Going from your master's to getting your first experience, guess what? It's not going to be long that you don't have any experience. You're going to get started. You're not going to get maybe the perfect first job. But what's important is that you get started. And don't think of your first job or your second job as permanent or long term. This isn't the 1950s when you had to keep that job forever. Go get started with that job. Maybe that's not perfect. It's not what you envisioned for your job with a master's degree, but start. You get 2 years of experience. The next thing you look at, you'll be able to say, this is my experience. And while you're doing that first job, get involved in your community. Keep building other skills and build your credential outside of your master's and outside of your job. Build other experience. So it's step by step. Nothing is permanent. Get started. And finally, getting a foot in the door. My foot in the door has always been just putting my hand up and getting involved. So look to the organizations that that intrigue you. Figure out how to connect your existing relationships to those organizations. Your professors are often good connectors as well and willing to do so. And you'd be surprised among the people how many people can connect you. So just the most unexpected connections come from conversation, collaboration, and just communicating with people you already know. And just one thing always leads to another. You get involved for a focus group, it goes to something else. So just stay active, stay in motion. And that's how you build the kind of careers that others like myself and now in our 50s, that we got involved. We stayed in motion and stay active in your field.
Thanks very much, Esther. We have questions here from Lisa. She says, in a third world environment of economic deprivation, there has been the glorification of entrepreneurship. It's as if a person who is not an entrepreneur is not relevant. How do we, in such an environment, amplify the importance of social impact that has no orientation to economics?
Wow, that's music to my ears. I'm involved with this organization I mentioned, Echoing Green. Take a look at the website. They are awarding fellowships a few times a year now, and the application cycle is open. Take a look at that and see how Echoing Green speaks about social entrepreneurship. So yes, I mean, I was in South Africa and watching some of my graduates have no problems getting jobs and others struggling, and it took them a while, but in the end most did find a way. I would say all of them found a way over time. So it's that persistence and stick to itness that matters. And you're right, many young people today are living in countries where you're going to have to create your own opportunity. I think there's an ILO statistic about a period of time when there would be about 1 billion young people entering the workforce, but only about 400 million jobs being available for them. So we've got to be entrepreneurial. There have been moments in my life where I've had to be entrepreneurial, and entrepreneurship is both business entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship as well. So there's a whole field of social entrepreneurship. There are many global organizations that are also working in South Africa and in all regions of the world. Get to know that field. And social entrepreneurship, which is the art of identifying innovations for the most pressing problems of our communities, countries, and the world. This is a field that has really grown And it's growing because there aren't enough formal sector jobs for everyone. And there are plenty of problems to be solved, and social entrepreneurs do that. So it is both. You have to stay at it, you have to stick to it. There are programs, there used to be a program I know called Youth Action Net out of IYF, International Youth Foundation. There are other organizations, there are organizations locally in South Africa that are looking at social entrepreneurship and business entrepreneurship too. But you're right, entrepreneurship encompasses both the social sector and business sector.
Thanks very much, Esther. We have another question related to education. How important is it to teach students to be critical thinkers rather than specialists? And I think you touched on this in your presentation, but maybe please just elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah. Well, in the United States, we have what we call liberal arts education, right? And I was surprised as I moved around the world that the idea of liberal arts education is not as pervasive. And in most parts of the world, you're finishing high school and you had kind of a general education through high school, and then you're starting to specialize already. And in liberal arts education, which is the predominant approach in the US, it's about critical thinking. And when I am busy at work with my colleagues, I can very clearly see the difference between the critical thinkers and the people who are at the table, um, needing to know what they have to do on the project. and and I'm always saying, you don't need to look to me for what we need to do. You all know this area of work. What we need is the ability to look at problems. And I mentioned in my talk design thinking, and to really kind of look at a problem, look at it from different angles, and to be solution oriented, and to map a way to get there, and then to be able to execute also. So critical thinking is crucial, and you develop that in university, and you develop that throughout your career as well. And I became a more and more and more critical thinker, a better critical thinker over time. And now when I walk into a room and I have to tackle a problem, I'm able to listen, take the information in, understand what the issues to be solved are, and to bring the teams together that can move things forward. But critical thinking is absolutely crucial. And closely linked to that is sort of data driven, sort of evidence based thinking too. I value that in the workplace so much. And you can tell at work, those who have critical thinking skills and those who don't. Those who don't are waiting to be told what to do. Those who have critical thinking know how to think, solve, and act.
Thanks very much, Esther. It's also true as an academic when you see students that have a broad approach in their answers to different critical questions. And if it's very specific, or if it's obviously playing on different knowledge sets that they have and intelligences that they've developed over the years. So that's very important, it's true. Okay, we have some more questions, Esther. Thank you for staying with us. So we have, what are the most important attributes would you say make a successful leader in this day and age? And then one more thing, as an international leader, who is your role model besides your mom?
um, there's so many qualities of leaders that we often talk about. And, this is probably one of the topics most written about, right? Um, there, I have read probably dozens of books on leadership. And so I'm going to think very practically um, about what I value when I look at leaders. I value leaders who put people first. I value leaders who put others first, think of themselves much later. I value leaders who have broad perspective. I spoke about that in my talk. You know, you just can't bring a single lens to work anymore. So you have to have broad perspective. I value leaders who are fearless. And it's maybe one of the hardest traits to develop. And it's it's been instrumental for me. Um, I've been in rooms where I was the only woman. I've been in rooms where I was the only person of color. I've been in rooms where I was the only immigrant to America. I've been in rooms where I was the shortest one. And I refuse to leave those rooms because all of you, all of the students, we need your perspective. Your lived experience matters. And so we can't let fear hold us back. So when you're in those rooms and it's going to happen, you just kind of need to give yourself that pep talk and just never leave. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to look out of place maybe, but don't leave. Keep at it and just be fearless. So you can read all the leadership books out there, but for me, it's leaders who put people first, people who are problem solvers and broad thinkers, and just fearless and resilient and having grit, right? So that's what I would highlight. Um, those I respect. I have people who are no longer living that I look up to. And of course, your very own Madiba has been um, an inspiration to me. A big portrait of President Mandela hangs in my office always. Those of you who've been in my office know that that continues. And they're great leaders who led nonviolent movements, nonviolent social change movements that I look up to. They're of course people who are mentors to me. They worked with them 3 times is because he puts people first. Um, I look up to other mentors in the business world who just don't give up, who know how to access resources in such innovative ways. And then, I look up to the ordinary people who so inspire me, the grandmothers who take care of uh, the children in communities, um, the activists who give up so much. Uh, those are people who really matter to me. And at the end of the day, what inspires me the most, the people who inspire me the most are young people. I have 2 young people who are my children. I have a 23-year-old and a 17-year-old. They inspire me, they motivate me. And all the students I worked with, the young people at work, this is an amazing generation. So I don't want to just be inspired by people who lived long time ago or older people. I want to be driven and motivated and inspired by young people. And that's what keeps me young. and that keeps me relevant. And so at the end of the day, young people inspire me.
That's really wonderful. Thanks very much, Esther. I think we still have some time to take a few more questions, and people are asking about your personal experience and what tools do you think are best suited to ensure cross-sector collaboration or multidisciplinarity? So what tools are best suited? And then another question, if you could go back in time, Esther, what would you have done differently? That's an interesting one.
I would have lived in South Africa much longer. It is a country that I love, a country where there are plenty of problems, but I've never connected with people from a head heart connection level than the people of South Africa, and almost chokes me up to talk about it. I loved the young people, and the Monash South Africa campus that I spent most time at, and I spent lots of time at UJ and WITS and UCT as well. I learned so much from the young people. I learned Prof. Graham has a twin sister who was a colleague of mine. I learned from her. Wow, talk about a powerhouse. So if I could change one thing, I would spend many more years in South Africa, rolling up my sleeve and figuring out how we can create more opportunity for more people. And a people who just changed me, and frankly made me a better person. And it's emotional for me to talk about it. And my whole family would say that. My 17-year-old, my 23-year-old, my sister, my parents, who all spent time in South Africa, they just simply say, what an extraordinary country. And at Monash, South Africa, I had a chance to get to know young people from throughout the continent. So many students from Zimbabwe and Malawi and Kenya and Nigeria. Wow. Wow. I'm optimistic. The world seems to want to focus on the problems. But if you want to focus on extraordinary people, go there. Go there. So that's the one thing I would change. And going to a more technical question, working across sectors. So I would, if you have the opportunity, try to get some experience in government, in business, in civil society. See if you can get, 2 to 3 years of experience in each of those worlds. It will serve you well, because you'll understand from firsthand experience what motivates people in government. How much can you ask of them? What can you ask of them? What can they deliver? What can they not deliver? You'll understand from working in business, how to plan, how to develop strategy, plan and execute. So there's no substitute to getting that experience firsthand. And, again, my experiences from humble roots and just with hard work and perseverance, I was able to get those experiences. So I encourage you to do that. But before you get that, you still want to figure out how to work effectively across those sectors. So talk to the people who work in each of those work, be able to drive social change work by understanding how to partner through multi-sector collaboration.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther. I think I know you have other commitments to get to today, but if we could take one or two more questions, I'd really appreciate that. We have another question that says, as a female leader, how in your experience Do we get more men to become gender champions? That's an interesting question. It ties in with how do you manage to keep going in such a male-dominated platform? And, what challenges do you face as a female in the work environment? I think those are all very gender-related questions. And it would be interesting to get your views on those.
Well, I remember when I was appointed CEO and working in South Africa, my first week, someone said to me, "Do you think they're going to take you seriously? You're a woman." And I thought that was an interesting question. And you know what? If you focus too much on that, you become paralyzed. Um, you claim your authority, you know? You claim your voice, you claim your seat at the table. And I think I've done that from the beginning. I was assertive. I didn't put up with any BS as I was, going through my career. And I was not going to be paralyzed at any stage by being a woman leader. So it goes back to that fearlessness and grit and perseverance, right? I just, no matter what the context, and I have worked in over 100 countries, and I've had plenty of experiences of walking in the room and having someone address the man next to me who's, my staffer. And, I've had all of those experiences, and I've got the response. I know how to say, I'm the CEO, let's chat, and this is my colleague. I'm not going to exclude someone next to me, but I know how to respond. I know how to assert my authority, and you're going to have to learn to do that from day one, and you're going to face it throughout. It's not going to go away. I still, every once in a while, will get a question that boggles my mind. Not long ago, someone who had just met me said, "What makes you a CEO?" And I heard my daughter whisper to someone, "Watch this," as I answered that question. But I took care of that question. I had someone just last week who said, "Oh, if you need help with this, I can help you." And, I've worked internationally quite a bit. And if you need some help on the international aspect, let me know. And I said, I think I'm good. Been working in about 100 countries over 25 plus years. I'm good. I could probably help you out." And just make a joke of it. So it doesn't stop. It doesn't go away. You have to have some humor, but you got to have confidence. I'm a believer in being humble. And I know some of my South African friends and friends at UJ are watching this, and they know that at the end of the day, I'm a simple person. I'm a humble person. But if my organization or my family or my movement is attacked in any way, you're going to see the very confident Esther come out. Humble Esther is going to step aside, and I'm going to take care of my people, my organization, and my movement. So you just have to stay at it, and it doesn't go away, but you get better at dealing with it, and you get better humor, and you got, you develop you have a toolbox to deal with those sexist moments, sexist, ageist, whatever moments. And then I will also cut it off if I witness any of that with my colleagues as well.
That's very reassuring to hear. And I think, yes, I think it's just about time. I know I'm pushing my luck here for maybe one more question, and this is on advice.
Okay.
What advice would you give to an individual who wishes to grow economically independent in a highly competitive and monopolistic world? Oh, that's a serious question to end off with.
Yeah. And I, kind of was staring at that issue when I was finishing grad school in my early 20s, and, living off a graduate fellowship. And so it's been a gradual process for me. And I think that the way that I tackled the issue of economic self-sufficiency from day one was based on having kind of the approach to work that I shared today. So, you know, having this multi-sector view and spending some time in business, having broad skill set, which helped me to be tagged as a leader early on. That helped me with becoming economically self-sufficient. Um, really sort of putting my hand up and going all over the world, including to countries that are incredibly challenging. I mean, my first job was with the UN in Somalia, you know, and I've worked in countries that sometimes are called failed states. And I put my hand up and went. So, sort of having that broad perspective, the broad global perspective, the broad sector experience. So, if you narrow your work and your thinking down, it's going to limit your opportunities for economic success. You take a broad view, you take a bold view across all of these fields, it will enhance your economic situation. And that was the secret to my success. And negotiate. I coach a lot of people on negotiating their compensation packages. So I've been smart about that. I'm humble, but I'm smart and strategic. And I, advise you to be the same. Uh, so build your economic self-sufficiency from day one for sure. Um, I didn't, my parents gave me an incredible education. And then, I took it upon myself to build myself economically. Um, we all come from different countries and contexts. I was 28 before I became an American citizen. And at that point, situation changed, but I've been there and I just didn't give up.
I think that's such a wonderful way to actually end off. You just didn't give up. And look what we have today, a truly successful human being. Thank you so much, Esther, for your wisdom, your humility, and your insight. And there were over 80 questions, so people clearly want to know more and more about what you have to offer. And I know that we just can't get through them, and that's just unfortunate, but they can follow your career and get to know you, perhaps through LinkedIn or something, and maybe you can answer their questions that way. I just wanted to say, Esther, I don't know if you would agree with me, but there are two quotes here I wanted to just quickly explore. Leadership is the art of empowering others, not telling them what to do. And I think that you haven't told anybody what they must do, but you've given suggestions on what they can do, and that makes every difference. And then one final quote here: even if you fail in doing something ambitious, you usually succeed in doing something important. I think that for our own students, they might think that, the next step is get their degree, then get a job, then become sufficiently stable in your life, help your family, and then just be a happy person. But you can be happy from now. You can be happy from now. You can be confident from now. You can build your character from now. You can be competent, and you can be connected. Your 4 C's.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. I'm excited to see what the young people on this call will do. And I'm here to support you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Esther.